everybody. You're listening to the Ancient Health Podcast. Welcome back. I'm so glad you joined us. You are going to be in for a treat with this interview. And I believe this may be one that you come back to hopefully multiple times, because I think there's going to be a lot of meat that we're going to get through. And I believe it's going to serve you in a great way. And I can say that because I know who's on the other end of this conversation. She's a guest that we've had on before. She's a dear friend of mine, probably one of the most brilliant minded practitioners that I know, but lives her life in such a way where you know that what she's speaking about works. And it's evidence. It's evidence of the fruit of her life. But she's doing great things in the world right now. She's helping so many people. And I'm thrilled to have her back on. We have Emily Morrow. She is an integrative health practitioner and root cause nutritionist. She's also one of the co-founders of Core Formulas. It's one of my favorite supplement brands. But we're going to cover a lot of ground. But Emily, thank you so much for being with us today. I love seeing you. We could just talk for hours, I feel like, but we're going to give people something really great today. And I just believe that there's something on this message that's going to change the game for people that are listening in.
Hey, Court. Yeah, I'm so glad to be back. I love the episode we got to do before. And I feel like this is kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, but I'm really excited because they sort of influence one another, and you can look at labs and know how you're doing, but then setting the foundation of your health really paves the way for what those lab results will be. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's so good. And if you are unfamiliar with Emily or her work, we'll make sure that we tag in the show notes the first episode that we did with her. And it was probably about a year ago, and we talked about blood work. So that's really just her area of expertise. She's got a lot of areas of expertise, but one that I feel like owns so well and does really well in teaching and instructing people is on interpreting blood chemistry. And she does it in a way that you will not see anywhere else. I guarantee you any doctor, physician, specialist that you go to will not look at a blood panel the way she does. And so she actually trains other practitioners how to interpret blood chemistry panel. So that episode's awesome. We'll go ahead and link it for you. But what we're going to talk about today are some of the pieces of your health puzzle that you have control over. And they're honestly the pieces that influence what those blood labs end up looking like on paper. We always like to look at paper because it gives us something like a standard of measure, but our health is what we do every day. It's just a end result of a bunch of choices that we make. And so what we want to do is really be able to identify what those pieces of the puzzle are, what you have autonomy over and control over, and how you may be able to change some of those to bring about a better outcome in your health. So the question for me here that I want to start with is, why is it in a world where we have so much sophisticated technology, we've got so many resources, I mean, you don't have to look far to find some type of product or remedy for any particular symptom or condition, yet people seem to be getting worse. So there's obviously a disconnect. There's something going on that we're missing, a bigger piece of the puzzle, because it's not for lack of options. I mean, there's a lot of options. So I would love your thoughts on this. What are people missing, not doing, or maybe overlooking that is really the biggest contributor to their symptoms and their presentation of their health?
I think that when you have so many options, people have a hard time deciding. I know when I'm at restaurants and the menu is pages and pages and pages long, you have option overload, and then you're frozen and paralyzed with, well, what do I eat? What do I choose? Versus if there was just a short and simple menu with a few options, then it's easier to decide. And I think part of the problem is we are all bio-individual, and people will chase what helped one person, or there's so many options out there that they're looking for the thing that's going to just be the unicorn for their health. You know, maybe if I just tried this biohack or this supplement, and before you know it, they're on 25 supplements doing 15 biohacks per day, but they've missed the most important aspects of their health, which is the mundane, day-to-day key foundational basics. And most people say, yes, I'm doing that. But most of the time when I assess a client or I ask specific questions, I realize we're not drinking clean, mineral-rich water in sufficient quantities each day. We're not eating in a restful parasympathetic state and chewing our food really well in that 3 to 5 meals per day, especially in women in their childbearing years, because you're more susceptible to stress. We're not balancing our blood sugar with a combination of protein, fat, and carbs with fiber in the mix. We're not taking time to do deep restorative belly breaths. We're not taking time off our phone. In fact, it's what most people look at the first hour of their day and the very last hour of their day. And when you look at what human beings need to survive, those are the first 3 things. You need sufficient water, you need sufficient food, and you need sufficient oxygen. The 4th thing is a functioning nervous system. And in our culture that is fast-paced and throwing things at us left and right, deconditioning people's ability to know how to make decisions, they're in nervous system dysregulation. And that is such an important part alongside those other 3 for overall optimal health and wellness.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. And I think that it's easy for us to be like, okay, that makes sense. I can do that. But like you said, culture is throwing a million things at you that are putting your body in kind of an autopilot where you're probably you think maybe, oh, I got the water filter and, I'm eating healthy meals, but you don't realize like you're eating meals while you're scrolling social media or, you're doing emails, you got blue light and like you're slamming down, a bone broth soup. Like that's great. But again, the nervous system piece to me seems to be like one of the, I don't know, the cornerstone piece. It's like, if that one is not addressed, a lot of almost everything gets affected. Like everything else, all of the processes that help you heal cannot take place when the body is in a state of constant stress. And we are assaulted by so many known things, but even unknown things, things like EMF. And I'm not even trying to like fearmonger anybody. It's just that we have to realize what our bodies are up against. The landscape is different now than it was 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So we're not adapting our lifestyle practices. We're just honestly just putting more on our plates, which is just creating more of a stress, which is creating that nervous system response of the fight or flight all the time. So when we're talking about the nervous system specifically, what is it that you feel like how is that influencing people when it comes to their metabolic health or their immune health? Because sometimes we just assume, well, my nervous system, maybe that means I have anxiety. We don't realize that it's connected to the immune system and so many other areas that we are struggling with.
Yeah. When the nervous system is dysregulated, there's different vagal responses that take place, and people can swing between parasympathetic dominance or sympathetic dominance. If we're speaking to sympathetic overdrive specifically, when this takes place, your pupils dilate, your muscles tense up, your heart rate accelerates. If you've ever spoken in front of a big crowd and you're getting ready to go speak, your hands and palms get sweaty, your mouth gets dry, your heart starts to race. You feel like you can't breathe as well. There's a secretion of epinephrine, cortisol, norepinephrine. And then in the long term, you can even see things like cholesterol increasing and inhibiting digestive and intestinal motility, where people struggle with constipation, even though they're eating, quote unquote, all the right things. That serotonin goes down. And now we have depression, poor sleep, even in chronic cases, fibromyalgia. It's going to inhibit reproductive function. You do not need to reproduce in order to survive. It's not a survival mechanism. So we start to have hair loss, irregular periods, PMS, infertility. A lot of these things can be traced back to nervous system dysregulation.
Yeah, I'm interested in, okay, because you said constipation. This is really important, I feel like, because a lot of people have such a toxic burden because their bodies are not in a parasympathetic where they're actually able to detoxify. Like your body is just holding, like you said, like if you just think about, like I just envision myself like holding onto the steering wheel with a white knuckle grip. Like that's what your body, even if you're not physically doing that, your body's like bracing for impact just while you're doing your normal day-to-day stuff. So of course your body's going to hold, like lock down everything, and it's not going to release stuff. So what happens when we have all these toxins coming in, all these exposures to things, and the body is not pushing them out? Like I imagine that this can have some pretty significant impact on our health. So let's maybe even dial in, like focusing in even on that drainage piece and the detoxification piece, because I think that's a massive barrier. Like identifying one, the nervous system plays a huge role in your capability to detoxify, but what is it even beyond that, or just maybe extrapolate on that? Why lymphatics, why the kidneys and the liver, all of that are what we're seeing, like overburdened. Like most people are really inefficient at detoxifying.
Yeah. One of the things I always ask clients is, do you struggle with going to the bathroom when you travel? Because that almost always takes the veil off of a deeper rooted problem at play of what happens when your drainage pathways are not working properly. When you are flying, you are naturally going to become more dehydrated. There's a greater need for water and minerals. And then you also have the factor of you're not going to digest as well when you fly. And so if you eat a big meal before flying, that's going to sometimes hinder your digestive processes. People usually sit more when they travel. They're waiting at an airport. They're sitting on an airplane. They're waiting for their luggage. They're getting in the Uber and sitting in the Uber. They're getting to their hotel and exhausted from travel because they almost feel depleted, and then they're just laying down. And so you don't have that movement. There's a sedentary aspect. Your lymphatic system does not have a natural pump. You need movement and massage and rebounding and stretching and other ways to keep that lymphatic system moving. And if you're sedentary and you're not doing those things, you're going to have a backup. And then most people don't sleep great at hotels. And now the lymphatic system's not draining. And it all kind of ties back to this idea of what does that all mean? You're not eliminating properly. I also ask people, how do you eat when you're traveling? Well, they're not eating a balance of high quality food and nutrients. They're typically not working out and moving their body. And therefore, all of their drainage systems, whether it's sweat, breathing, peeing, pooping, get backed up. And now we have a reaccumulation of toxins in an already toxic world.
Oh, you know what? If you're not raising your hand, okay, first of all, we're real on this podcast. And this happens to me every day. It's like my greatest anxiety of traveling is because listen, we're all here. Everybody knows my business because I share it on the podcast. But that is like to a T. If I do not bring an enema kit with me when I travel, I'm in bad shape. I better have a lot of magnesium or something on board because it never fails. And I don't even have to get on an airplane. I can just go drive somewhere different. And that stress, that little extra stress, which I imagine really does say something, right? Because you should have some flexibility and adaptability. And so that is something that I'm working on. And, I believe that I'm getting a little bit better. But all that to say, if you're listening, like, pay attention to these clues. And also, yes, me too. Like, we even health conscious, like trying to make good decisions. Like, I struggle with this stuff. I know other people struggling with it. So, but these are also just signs and ways that your body is showing up to tell you, hey, maybe that bucket is a little full, because the minute you get out of your normal routine, you all of a sudden start to break down. Like, it's very obvious. So what do we do in those scenarios? Like, how do we optimize, or how do we support lymphatics? How do we support the liver? Are there specific nutrients? Are there certain practices? Are there things that you have seen work for people to even maybe get them in a position where when they do travel, they're not experiencing that in the future?
Drinking enough water with minerals added to it is one of the things I recommend for pretty much everybody. I really love the Quinton minerals. They have the little travel size. I really like Body Bio Elite. They have a smaller bottle that I travel with. There's also packets people will empty into their water bottle. I try to tell them to avoid ones with a lot of stevia or monk fruit, just because I'm not a big fan of a lot of stevia and monk fruit. And so if you're upping your minerals and having more than one, you just want to be mindful of that. Getting up to walk on an airplane, if it's a longer flight, and stretching can be really helpful. And then even grounding when you get to where you need to go can be helpful. And then supplementation wise, I really do like magnesium. I think that can really help with motility flow when you are traveling. Eating as healthy as you can. And then I like to travel with supplements if I fly, like Rosemary Supreme, just from an EMF and radiation perspective, and then Takisumi as well, which is a binder from Supreme Nutrition. One of the things I was taught is most hotel rooms are moldy, and you can add Takisumi to one of the little cups that they have in a hotel room, and it will help attract some of the mold spores in the air so that you're not breathing in a lot of the possible mycotoxins in the air. which will have a direct effect on your drainage pathways, your sleep, and your digestion.
Oh, I've never thought about that. It makes total sense. I'm definitely doing that next time because that is a great binder. And we'll link that one too. I've never thought about that, but you're right. A lot of hotels, I mean, not to mention the fact that they're cleaning them with like Lysol and Clorox. And then like, I mean, it's just grimy. Like I can't even I mean, there are some like boutique hotels, maybe they're it's a little better, but like the fragrance alone from the cleaning supplies, like I have a headache just from that. So next time y'all be traveling, get you some Takasumi, put it in a little cup. Yeah, I literally thought you were going to say drink it. And then when you're like, no, you just put it out and it tracks it in the air. Like amazing. That's such a great little pearl there. So okay, so we've talked a little bit about nutrients, some of the organ systems that are involved. What are the pathways? Now we've identified, obviously, pooping and constipation, that being red flag number one. If you are not going to the bathroom regularly, or maybe it comes upon you certain times like you're traveling, that would be an indication that some of your detox pathways are not optimized. What are the other pathways that our body utilizes to excrete toxins?
Yeah. When you imagine sort of the drainage funnel, the colon tends to be at the bottom, but I always say that the kidneys are the rate limiting step of drainage. That's just something that I've seen in time because it's almost like the air filter of the home. The liver gets a lot of attention. The kidneys don't get as much attention. Your kidneys need water. They need minerals, and they need things to be able to filter things properly. And you're also peeing multiple times throughout the day. And the kidneys are a very responsible organ and the health of your kidneys for that. If people start to feel lower back pain, that's a really good sign that the kidneys are a little bit overwhelmed to a degree. And the kidneys are very sensitive to stress, overworking, and things in our environment: pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, heavy metals, mycotoxins. The kidneys are a target organ for heavy metals specifically. And if you can imagine an air filter in your home, if it is inundated with dust, it's now no longer preventing the bad stuff from getting into the home. You want your kidneys working optimally. You then also have your lymphatic system that we talked about you have to work on your lymphatic system, whether that's deep breathing. The largest lymph nodes actually start with a deep breath. When people go to try to gua sha their face and they haven't focused on deep breathing first, or the area under their clavicles, just massaging in circles in that area can help activate the beginning of that lymphatic system. They can actually get more backed up. If people go get a lymphatic massage, they're usually not prioritizing that area, and they walk away, they don't feel very good. They might have a headache, they feel stuffy, they feel puffy and inflamed because there was a backup in the pump somewhere. Maybe they notice that they feel more swollen around their hands or their feet or even their face. Then you also have your sweat, your skin. That's a really large detox organ. And if you're never sweating, that's probably not a very good sign because our sweat helps eliminate impurities through the skin. You have your liver, which is a very important organ. It can regenerate itself, but there's different phases that the liver detoxes through: phase 1, phase 2, and then that will then get excreted into the bile, the urine, and the poop. But the liver is very, very, very important, especially when it comes to hormone metabolism. And then upstream, you have where a lot of your health begins, which is your cells. And a lot of people have compromised cellular function. And if all health begins at the cellular level and the cells are compromised, then everything else is going to be affected as well.
So order of priority, I mean, working on having healthy organelles, these healthy systems and organs is going to promote the cells being healthy. Like, I mean, the cells are comprising the organ. So, I mean, I guess there's like, you could kind of take it either way, but you know, if you're not doing the things like you said, the lymphatic system is going to require you to put effort into it. Like, you can't have healthy lymphatics and be sedentary all the time because then that promotes stagnation. Like, everything's just sitting there, and like, to get the juices flowing, you got to move it. Like, manually, you have to move it. This is one reason why rebounding has become popular, and gua sha, like you said. And we actually have had a few guests that have been very lymphatic specific. And so those episodes are really helpful if you're interested in a deep dive into that. But red flags being, because I want to summarize this so you guys can kind of start to wrap your head around this, because this is really tangible material. And I feel like if you can just get a grasp on it, they're very easy concepts, and you can start to figure out how that fits into your life. Because if you can't get it into the environment, you can't make that fit, then it's just information and it's not useful to you. So constipation obviously is going to be a red flag. If you're sedentary and you're not moving, you feel like you're swelly, you're puffy, you get headaches. If you are doing things like you just mentioned, I've done several, different type of lymphatic massages, and I've noticed right away, like I immediately feel awful. Like, whoa, we there maybe the order or the process in which we did that was not always right, but that's also something to pay attention to, some of that puffiness and stagnation. And then when we talk about sweating, this one's interesting because a lot of people will just say they can't sweat. So I'm curious then, if you can't sweat, does that mean that pathway that is undernourished, or there's some broken down pieces? What in your opinion, or is that, is that just baked into their hardware? That's like something that's related to genetics or epigenetics or something like that. What factors are contributing to somebody maybe not sweating? Because I do hear that from a lot of women. They're like, I just don't sweat. Yeah. But that's if we need to sweat to detoxify or be able to get certain things out, then it seems like we would need to be able to figure out how to optimize that.
Yeah. I think it just goes back to the simplicity of a backup in the other organ systems. Just from experience in working with clients, the ones who can't sweat are the ones who've been in a chronically stressed state for a very long time, or they maybe just had a illness. I know that when a lot of the pandemic was happening, one of the things I kept hearing from people who have saunas or took baths was, why am I not able to sweat as quickly as I did prior to this? And when you think of how these different assaults on the body impact our cells and our systems as a whole, it sort of backs everything up. And there's not really one thing that fixes that. It's enhancing the overall health of the body and drainage systems as a whole. We have to remember that sickness dehydrates it. We use up more minerals. It throws off our gut health. It's not even uncommon for people to all of a sudden have blood sugar dysregulation, which is a threat to cortisol. When cortisol is high, that backs up things because of nervous system dysregulation. But we should be sweating. We should be perspirating. Even our breath, we're eliminating in a form of that. Like if you were to have a microscope, like you can see the particles that are coming out of the mouth in a way. But I think sweating is one of the healthiest things that we can do. And if people could get in the habit of finding a way to sweat through movement, through sauna therapy, through hot baths, through foot soaks, their pathways are going to thank them for that.
Yeah. So infection, it could be, viral infection or nervous system dysregulation could be really driving someone's inability to sweat. It's basically like, those are two areas. Okay. Because this is important to realize, because if I'm someone that's like struggling in that aspect, I'm like, okay, I know sweating is going to help me detoxify. This is obviously a sign that I need to optimize those areas that maybe they need a little extra TLC. You've got to work on those pieces before you would say just jumping in the sauna? Like some people are gonna be like, well, I just sauna until I start sweating. I'll just keep doing it. Do you feel like there's any risk in doing that for someone that's like, hey, I get in the sauna and I just don't sweat? Like, is it like, do they just keep trying? Or is it like, no, we should probably work on like the stress levels and the cortisol piece before we just go dropping the hammer on the sauna?
Yes. I think that there's not a one size fits all answer there, but I'm thinking to a client right now that just came to mind that could not sweat. She would go outside and her body would physically overheat. She'd get really, really red, but like would not sweat. And if you think about your skin being a detox organ and sweat eliminating impurities, is that just all being recycled? If it's dumping from the cells or getting pulled from the kidneys and lymphatic system. And it was about a year of working together. We started at a place where her bucket was very overflowing. I remember she sent me a picture with like tears down her eyes as her whole face was sweating, being on just a gentle walk, like in some heat outside. But it took a long time of focusing on the foundations of health and correcting some of her bio-individual lab imbalances.
Yeah. Okay. I'm very curious to know, and you can give a more like generalized answer to this, but I think it's important to realize that what you just said, it took you a long time. And this is somebody that you had to be very gentle with their body. So breaking that down, what that could look like as far as lifestyle changes, supplementation, just what were you having this client work through that you felt like kept them engaged? They started to see results. Their body started to respond in a favorable way. Like what did that process look like? And obviously like everybody's bio individual, but I think sometimes it's helpful to understand what may be required, because sometimes we just think like, okay, I'll just go buy whatever that influencer said to buy, and then I'll do this. Like, but if you can maybe even high level see what the road may look like for you, then, and you know, maybe what to expect, then you can, it's almost like it gives you a little bit more confidence to take the steps, as opposed to just, well, that's a lot. I don't really know if that's going to work for me. So I just don't know if I can do any of it.
Yeah. If we think about going back to that drainage funnel of each significant part of it, if we start with the bowels, adding in warm lemon water with sea salt in the morning is something really simple people can do. They can also add some aloe vera juice. I really like the Lakewood brand with the pink label. And if that's still not working, adding in some magnesium or another form of bowel support to that. That's something very simple of like, we want to be having 1, ideally 2 complete bowel movements every single day. And that has to be a starting point for people. Then we go up to the kidneys, simply adding in, even to that morning lemon juice, a little bit of cranberry juice, pomegranate juice, eating some cherries. These all support the function of the kidneys and staying hydrated. So going back to making sure you're drinking sufficient water every day. I would say most people don't drink enough mineral rich water, or I would say that that's the case for the general population. And drinking the gallon challenge is also not great because that can deplete your minerals. If you hyper too much water, that can be dehydrating to a degree as well. Then we go to the next system of the lymphatic system. I'm real big on having people stretch and go through lymphatic dry brushing with deep breathing. There's great YouTube videos that you can look up. We can put it in the show notes, the one that I send to clients for dry brushing and lymphatic massage. You'll literally notice an instant change to even the facial structure because a lot of that inflammation goes away. And then for the liver, I love castor oil. Castor oil packs are wonderful. Dandelion tea, foods, beets, artichokes, adding that to their diet. These are things that like I have people do every single day. Like make these just a part of your daily habit and routine. And then with the cells, lipid replacement therapy. This is where it can take time. It can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to really nurture those cells, which we use in our practice, a combination of PC and balance oil and minerals. And then if people struggle with fat digestion or their gut is compromised, adding in the ox bile, the TUDCA, the sodium butyrate to that to start replenishing that cell membrane that keeps the foreign invaders and toxins out that then don't hinder the lymphatic system and the gut and the kidneys and the liver. It's like you're building a strong castle to keep the invaders out instead of constantly having to fight the battle without a wall.
Oh, that's so good. That really honestly makes sense too, because I feel like in taking that approach, you're actually building resiliency. You're increasing the threshold of function, which is really what you want to do. Like if you can get, I mean, if you think about it, your symptoms are birthed out of like an inability for a certain organ or organ system or group of systems to be able to perform their job in the way that they were designed. So if we can just start to build and nourish that system back up, now all of a sudden it's regulating the things that were slipping through the cracks before. And so you're not as susceptible to infections, or the cold that you had didn't linger for 3 weeks because the immune system's not so battered the whole time. So it's really about doing the legwork, sticking with it long enough to be able to build the body's reserves back up so that when you do have exposures to toxins when you travel, or you do get a cold or something comes up in your life, it's not wiping you out. And that's where I see a lot of people struggling is like, they're really exposed to like the everyday thing and it's like taking them out. I mean, I felt it too. I mean, we saw that with COVID, right? I mean, COVID came around and I mean, it changed the landscape, I feel like, because where before, maybe someone got the flu, like COVID was decimating, populations and the health of people. We still have people years after COVID that are still dealing with the symptoms of long COVID. And it's it's really brought to light some important things that I think have exposed the lack of value that we've placed on some of those foundational pieces. Now, I want to pivot a little bit because the sweating piece and the detoxification piece is really critical right now. Like I said, the landscape of our world is toxic and it's only getting more toxic. We don't have to go too far to realize that glyphosate and insecticides and, chemtrails, like all these things, we don't even need to go into all of it. It's there and it's increasingly becoming more of a threat, and it's dysregulating and it's overburdening these organ systems that we're saying are so valuable. So when we talk about sweating, there are really kind of two different buckets, right? There's the sweating that you have when you've got someone that is working out or they're outside and they live in South Carolina like I do, and it's, 100 degrees and like 150% humidity, and you just sweat. You're just like standing there sweating. And then there's sweating that actually elicits more of, it happens more in this parasympathetic, right? It's not like the body's like, oh, we're stressed, we're sweating to cool us down. There's more of a therapeutic type of sweating that you can do by using a specific type of sauna, which is what we're referring to as infrared sauna. And so I want to talk about this because it's a technology that I believe is so valuable to that piece of detoxification. Like you were just talking about the drainage funnel, how it can really accelerate and amplify healing for somebody because it gets some things moving out of that sweating pathway. So not all sweat is the same. Neither are all saunas. And maybe you could even touch on this a little bit too, just in the difference between like a conventional sauna that most people would probably see at like a health spa or a gym where it's, it's like a cedar box and it's really hot. And like the difference in that compared to something that's infrared.
From experience, when I've stepped foot into a normal sauna, you're met with just uncomfortable heat. And I think back, my dad, when we were kids, would tell us he was a wrestler and they were forced to go, and he called them misery hot boxes because it's so hot, and they'd also wear trash bags to cut weight for wrestling. But it's at such a high temperature that it is literally depleting, and you are sweating so significantly. Granted, they were probably in it for way longer than they needed to be, but I naturally have lower blood pressure that when I get in a normal sauna, I feel miserable. Like it should not take your body up. You should not be in a place where it's so extremely hot to start sweating. The temperature should not have to be up at 180 degrees. For me personally, that makes my blood pressure go down and I get headaches. I feel so incredibly dehydrated, but I've never felt that with infrared based boxes, as I like to call them, because it uses both heat and light, and it doesn't have to be at such a high temperature to invoke a sweating response.
Okay, so we're talking about the difference between infrared and conventional sauna. And I totally agree. Conventional saunas, I look like a tomato when I come out of there. Like my skin feels like it's on fire, feels good for a few minutes, but it's not tolerable. And that's because the temperature is like 190 plus. Like many conventional saunas are over 200 degrees, whereas infrared is different. It's a much lower temperature. And really, like, just to simplify it, if you're listening, conventional saunas are heated by increasing the air temperature. So your body temperature increases because of the external temperature. And that's controlled by using like coal, those like little, whatever, the little wood fire coal things. So the air temperature has to be really hot to build the core body temperature to elicit the sweating response. In that scenario, you're actually creating a stressor, like a hormetic stressor, just same as exercise, right? Exercise is a stress to the body, but it can be a good stress if it's used appropriately because it builds your tolerance, builds the stress response. Infrared is different in that it's actually using light and heat, and that combination is allowing you to raise your core body temperature from the inside out. So that way you don't need the external air temperature to be so hot. So a lot of people can start sweating at like 115 degrees. And it's really incredible because in that scenario, you're not stressing the body. There's not this sympathetic where the body's like, oh, we need to start cooling down. It actually keeps you. Many people use infrared saunas for the nervous system component. It's very relaxing for them. So for somebody that's really impaired or vulnerable or compromised, an infrared sauna can be really gentle because it doesn't add to the stress bucket. You're not going to have somebody that, I mean, the second you put them in any type of stressful situation, like everything's shutting down and they've got headaches and they're breaking out in rashes and they can't digest their food and they're bloated and when you're like that bottomed out across the board, you cannot continue to stress the body to make it heal. Like you need to get the body safe to get it to heal. And so that's really the beauty in using an infrared technology, is that you can actually build that detoxification capacity. And we'll talk about some of the other healing mechanisms as well, because there's a lot more therapeutic benefit than just that detoxification piece. But I would love to get your thoughts on that. Like, in what ways have you seen, and I know that you have an infrared sauna, I have one. It's been a part of our own personal healing journey. And so that's why it's something that I feel like is really valuable to talk about, because it's not just like, there are a lot of tools. Like we said in the very beginning, there are a lot of tools, but there are specific ones that I feel like can play a really important role at supporting the foundations that we've just covered. So in what ways do you feel like an infrared sauna can help somebody that maybe is compromised in multiple areas? Or what ways have you noticed that maybe are outside of just pushing detox through sweat, but maybe the immune health? What does that look like for you?
I started with the tent sauna that you like zip up and you look like you're in an astronaut suit. And I got mine way back in the day. I want to say it was 2018. And I was shocked at how much I sweat. I mean, it was a pool of sweat. I was stunned. I mean, I grew up playing soccer out in the sun. I'm familiar with sweat, but didn't understand. It was really hard for my brain to wrap its mind around the fact that an infrared light that I couldn't see was heating my skin 80%, 20% was the air. Yeah. And I was dripping in sweat. And I'd always wanted a box sauna. They look super cool. So I have one in my garage from Sunlighten, and it was my parents. And then I really wanted it, so I got it from them. And at the time when I made the switch, I, again, am very sensitive to extremes of heat. I always have been, just with naturally lower blood pressure. And I found that if I divvied up my sauna sessions into 2 15 to 20 minute sessions per day, I felt the best. And I would wear metrics and track symptoms to look at how is this actually positively influencing my health. And I'd say the top things I noticed were better sleep, like almost right away, less soreness after workouts. And that's something that I think is debated in our world of, do you take an ice bath after a workout or do you get in the sauna? And I really feel like I'm less sore when I get in the sauna because of the relaxation piece that's going on. My HRV values improved drastically, like big time. And people would ask me all the time, how do you get your HRV above 100? And when I was consistent with my sauna sessions, 3 to 4 times a week, split sessions, 15, 20 minutes each, that is when I saw my HRV at its highest amount. Mm-hmm. And when you think of what that's doing, of increasing heat shock proteins, enhancing immune function, teaching your body true resilience, because it's that up and down of that heart rate and the heat, your body becomes more resilient. And then I'd say probably the last thing was a relaxation. My mood was just better. There's nothing better than getting out of a sauna session and you're dripping sweat and then like rinsing off in a semi-cold shower. I don't know. I just think it feels so good.
So good. You've posted about your HRV in the past, and I have been one of those people. I'm like, is this real? Like, how did she do it? Because, I'm like over here, my HRV is like 40. I'm like, well, this doesn't look good for my longevity game. So now, granted, it has come a long way. So it's doing much better. And I do think that the sauna plays a big role in that. But again, like it just, there's a lot of benefit that I feel like can be utilized. And that's not a big time commitment either. Breaking it up in 2 15-minute sessions, like that's very doable, because some of these like things that we are all doing to try and make our bodies feel better, I mean, it's like a full blown time commitment. And I'm telling you, not everybody got time for that. We don't have 6 hours a day to be trying to keep our bodies alive. So I'm like, how can I do this and enjoy it? And I'm also a fan of sauna because I hate the cold. So like, I see the cold, I see those people. I see y'all doing your cold plunges. I'm so happy for you. I cannot. My adrenals, my stress, my body is like, why would we do this? So I
do love a good cold plunge. I do. I think I love putting myself through hard things.
Yeah.
I don't always enjoy it, but I love it at the same time.
I know that's definitely, I know that's the thing. I'm like, yeah, I kind of lose in the front end of the battle because I mentally can't get over. I'm just like, oh, the cold. So, but anyway, I digress. I digress with the sauna.
It's probably also because you're eliminating impurities. Like if you're consistently sweating on a weekly basis, you've now taken the burden off of the bowels, off of the lymphatic system, off of your kidneys and liver. If you are staying hydrated, right? That's a really important thing, is adding more water, more minerals if you're sweating. But I mean, there's been several articles I've read where you can sweat out things like alcohol, as we know, but toxins and heavy metals. And part of the provoking response when you do a mold test or a heavy metal test that's urine based, they tell you to get in a sauna beforehand. Why would they tell you to do that, right? If it's pulling things out. And I even polled my Facebook group that I have, which is a bunch of people who've taken my blood chemistry course, and asked them, what are the benefits you've noticed in yourself or your clients from infrared sauna use? And there was a lot of responses, but some of them were clearer skin, less joint inflammation, overall feeling better when used a couple times a week, clearing up acne, very helpful in chronic pain situations, better sleep, better energy, less muscle aches and pains. I've also seen an increase in my HRV. Someone else said better HRV, better skin, better complexion. Your skin has impurities. So if you're sweating that out and washing your face after, you probably will notice a change in your skin health, sleep and skin health, overall decreased puffiness, nervous system regulation, my mold markers lowered, better hormones, better sleep, better nervous system regulation.
Yeah, that right there speaks volumes because that covered so many things. It wasn't just, well, I lost a couple pounds. Like I felt like, it's your immune system, your skin. One of the things that was really interesting was the pain piece, like joint pain, inflammation, maybe pain around recovery. And I know you mentioned heat shock protein before. Can you even describe what that is? Because a lot of people live with pain and they've just now realized like, this is maybe just my new normal. And they don't realize that there are contributing factors, obviously, that are continuing to keep that pain in place. But something like a sauna, I would never even think to use for somebody that's in chronic pain.
Right. Well, when we think about like, where does pain come from? There's a root of that. There's something that's driving it. So anytime you raise your internal temperature by exposing your body to heat, you are mimicking the effects of having a fever. People always say like, let's get the fever down. Unless it's super, super high, a fever is a natural built-in mechanism that is a workout for your immune system. So regular sauna use, you're giving your immune system a regular workout, and a stronger immune system is able to fight the things that increase pain. So heat shock proteins that are released when your body is heated play a massive role in immunity and modulation of that.
Yeah. That's so fascinating because I would venture to say that a lot of times we think of sauna use as something that's just helping us keep the drain open on toxins, just moving stuff around like that. But you're also addressing the immune system. And that is so important. And the recovery piece, because let's face it, like a lot of people cannot sleep well. Like they are up and down all night long. They can't fall asleep. Maybe they've got anxiety. Maybe they're just ruminating on a lot of thoughts. They're wired but tired. There's so many different reasons why people aren't sleeping well, but that's all playing into their ability to recover. And I feel like that is a massive missing piece in the puzzle of people's health, because if you do not have the ability to recover, you're just taking that bad deposit from yesterday and carrying it over. And guess what? The snowball gets bigger. So that deficit that you had is now going to create a more amplified response, like physically for your body, which will eventually affect you mentally. And emotions play a role in that too. But I see the recovery piece being something that is a struggle for a lot of people. People are aware of it, I think, now because we've placed such an importance. It's a part of a lot of conversation is like, gotta sleep, gotta sleep. But people aren't getting restorative sleep. So it's interesting that you say you use it at night too, and you've noticed that you get better sleep. I think that again, like if there's a therapy that probably can help support a lot of those foundations, sauna use seems to be something that across the board, like even the people that you polled has really proven to be something that can help. What other areas of your day-to-day life do you feel like are just non-negotiable priorities for you? Because I think that you are one of the people that is like so intentional. And you also really look at the metrics, right? So you're looking at data on your body, but you're also very connected to feedback that your body's giving you, like just the small cues day to day. But maybe this can shed light on for somebody that's listening that is like, what else can I be looking at too?
Oh man, I don't have this 2 hour long morning routine. I see some people put their 2 hour long morning routine online, and that's not me. I love to habit stack. So while I'm doing my morning quiet time, I have my red light therapy going. I'm sitting on a PEMF mat. I have the one from Therasage. I'm journaling and I am setting myself up. I call it sandwiching my day with that first piece of bread so that this part of my day has almost a foundation going into it. And then I end my day the same way so that this day doesn't bleed into the next. And quiet time is a massive part of that. I try to expose my eyes to natural light first thing in the morning to set my circadian rhythm up for success and be more balanced. Melatonin starts that morning. And I get some sort of movement in. That's something that's so important for me. I go for a walk every single day without fail. That's something that is a non-negotiable for me. And then I try to at least 4 to 5 times a week do some sort of resistance-based training. So in the morning, I'm either going for my walk or going to the gym to do resistance-based training. I also eat like a raw bar, some sort of liquid calories on the way. I don't like to train fasted. And have a really good breakfast. Really good breakfast with 30 to 40 grams of protein. I was with family recently and they said, like, what would be the things you'd recommend just for most people? And that's it. Like, get some sort of movement in, start your day in quiet time and stillness. Otherwise, you're going to be running in chaos. Don't look at your phone, expose your eyes to the sun, and have a really good solid breakfast filled with protein, some lemon water. I drink King coffee in the morning as well, which I just obsessed with and love. And those are simple things. I don't even think about them anymore because they're so integrated into my day and my life.
Yeah. I hope that somebody is like excited to hear that, because I think that a lot of times, maybe it's just me, but you can listen to a lot of people that are in the health space, practitioners, whatever it is. They could be a lot of businesses that have great products and stuff like that. But you immediately begin to think like, I don't even have enough time to incorporate all of this. If this is what it's going to take for me to heal, there's no way this fits into my life. I've got kids. I have a job. I've got a puppy pooping on the floor. Like I'm not describing my life. This is, this, but here's the thing. All of that to say that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. I think that you found such a beautiful rhythm. And like you said, now it's not something that you have to get up and really think through a checklist. That's just your rhythm. And I think for a lot of us, finding the rhythm that supports the healing, supports those foundations that we talked about, that's what's going to really get your body in a gear of staying at that threshold where it can manage stressors. And that's where you want to get to. Maybe the legwork is a little harder up front. Do that, but it shouldn't be that you have to work that hard forever to sustain it. If you have to put in the driver's seat, you're taking care of your physical body, you've got to go back to the drawing board because you're missing it. Like if you are having to spend hours and hours forever and ever, like if it's going to take 6 hours a day of different therapies for you just to hold it together for just the indefinite future, there's something going on. And I think that that's really important to bring to light, because it shouldn't be that way. Otherwise, like that is going to burn you out. First of all, financially, it will burn you out because that gets really expensive. But I love that we kind of started with talking about the foundations, what the red flags are. Here are some of the signs and symptoms where some of those big pieces of your health puzzle might need some extra love. They might not be doing their job that efficiently, and it will take small practices and intentional effort. And maybe you've got to work with a coach or you've got to work with a practitioner to really dial in what the priority is. But once you can get those building and back on track, utilizing something like a sauna, which I think across the board is probably one of my favorite tools because of the benefits that we talked about. It helps your immune system. It helps with inflammation, helps with recovery, helps with viral infections. I've even put my kids, like I've had 2 sunlight and saunas over the years, both of the same model, because they have one called the Aspire, which I don't know if that's the one you have. It has the near, mid, and far infrared, which are 3 different wavelengths of light that essentially penetrate at different levels. One is more skin level, one is a little bit deeper into the tissues, and the other one is like real deep into the cell. And so each one of those has a different heat level and light frequency that it operates at to be able to deliver the therapeutic response. But I've even utilized it for the kids when they're younger at very short like stints of time. Like we're talking like 5 minutes. So not long, but when they immediately start feeling sick, I love how you brought up that immune factor of mimicking the fever response in the body, because the infrared sauna warms you from the inside out. And if you're trying to think about like what that is, if it's like a cold day out, the best way to think about it is like go outside when the air is crisp and cool, but it's a really sunny day and it's like clear blue skies. And you know how you feel the warmth of the sun? It's like, oh, I can actually feel my body getting warmer, but the air is cold. That is what infrared, that's the best way to describe what's happening in the sauna. We're recreating that. It's a man-made box that's trying to recreate that experience of getting the infrared healing from the sun. And so you can use it for your whole family. And that's one thing that I've noticed for the kids is the second they get sick, I don't use it on the regular for them, but the moment they start to come down with something, I'm like, let's just do 2 5-minute sessions in the sauna, because we can start to build that immune response, like the fever that's basically going to fight off those viral cells. And healthy cells can manage that increase in temperature, but viral cells can't. They don't tolerate it very well, which is what can help amplify the immune system. So I know I kind of went down the rabbit hole on that, but I thought that it would be really good to kind of loop around, summarize where we've been and what we've talked about. And I would love to give you the floor, you know, kind of as we wrap things up here, just to give people maybe a little bit more about you, what you're doing, what you're interested in right now. Any final thoughts too, just on encouragement for people, because we have a lot of health educated listeners that are really trying to do their best. But I think that sometimes I know if I get overwhelmed, a lot of other people do as well. So any final thoughts that you have just to leave our listeners with, and then obviously the rundown on all the things you're working on right now, because you've got a lot going and it's exciting to be a part of and to watch.
We got a lot of pots cooking on the stove.
Yeah.
Lots, and the oven's going at the same time. I did a webinar this past weekend all about foundational wellness, and there was a chat that I did on where to begin in your wellness journey, and it encompasses everything you just said for the person who's overwhelmed. And I love saunas, I love red lights, but for the person who's not drinking enough water and not eating well and not moving their body and not pooping 2 times a day, I would say hold off and wait. There are so many free things you can do, and what I want to leave people with was, in one of the sessions, this is a condensed version of it, but it's the method that I have used my whole life to sort of crowd out the noise and figure out what do I want to implement. Because a true practitioner is not going to tell you what you need for the rest of your life. They're going to equip you to figure out that you can do that for yourself. And I think that so many people have lost the ability to make decisions for themselves, and they just want someone to hold their hand and tell them, and that's not growth. And you will always be in a hamster wheel for the rest of your life in that. There will be a anchor that's pulling you down. We're going to have to be swimming upstream, relying on something to get you there. And so this 4-step method is, step 1 is assessment. You really have to assess where you're at. mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like, where are you? Because if you don't know where you are, you don't know where to start. And then I think that in that assessment, some of the other questions I ask people are, what fears and worries do you have surrounding your health? And then how do those drive your decisions in making health-based decisions? Do you have anxiety and you saw someone on Instagram taking a supplement for anxiety, and because you're fearful, you won't be able to understand why it's there, how to beat it. You're going to go impulse buy that supplement, but you haven't focused on any of the other things. You haven't assessed where you're at in the other pillars of health. And then what are you currently doing? And how can you add just one thing to that? Okay, I've started eating more in the morning. I can add 5 deep breaths before that meal. Make that a lifestyle change. Once that's a habit, add one more thing. I can avoid eating liquids 30 minutes before, during, and after my meals. Add one more thing, right? And you continue to build these life-altering habits that will set the stage for overall wellness in the future. And then I think the last two in this assessment part is, why do you want to feel well? What is the purpose of your life? What are you going to do once you feel well? A lot of people don't know the answer to that question. And if you don't know what your why is, you're just chasing health for no reason. If your reason is, I just want to look better, you're toast. You're truly toast. You really are. You have to have a deeper understanding of why. It has to drive your purpose. I want to feel well because, and once I feel well, I'm going to implement X, Y, Z. My dad taught me this once, that we're born for a reason. And when you realize that you were born for a reason, that's step one. When you figure out your purpose for life and start implementing it, that's step two. Because you were made for a purpose, you were made for a reason. So assessing where you're at. If you are completely emotionally exhausted and depleted, and you know naturally you need therapy and counseling, take that route. Don't go buy a bunch of supplements and labs and a sauna. Know where you're at. So then step two is sort of going off of that, of like actual habit selection. Look at everything you're currently doing, see things out in front of you, and decide, what can I implement right now in this season of life? Maybe you're a new mom and your time is minimal. And so you can implement deep breaths and almost like relaxing music as you're pushing your baby in a stroller in the neighborhood. And that's what works for you right now. And you have your big water with minerals that you sip on, that you finish before you get to the end of your walk. That sometimes takes strategizing and sitting down and writing things out and being creative, but you have habits you can implement. Step 3, and we've missed this in our culture. People don't do this anymore, but pause. And to pause, you have to remove yourself from the noise. You got to get off social media sometimes. You've got to remove yourself from the busyness of life and be bored and pause and figure out, like, what do I truly need right now? What feels well? When there's option overload and so many different routes I could take, pause. And then the final step is application. What I see, and probably what you see, is people try something for a week and they don't see a change, and then they go to the next thing, and then they go to the next thing, and they're grasping for this unicorn, or they're grasping for these straws that's going to be the ticket. But true health, true wellness is the combination of the mundane, the everyday habits that you can sustain over the course of a lifetime. And so I tell people, commit to whatever it is you feel led to do for at least 6 months, and commit to that. And then once you have that, reassess. Go back to step 1 of, where am I at? Habit selection, pause, move forward. And that will kind of keep people on the right track, where they're not 3 months into something of rebuilding their cells or focusing on foundations and grasping for the next thing. Maybe I need to detox mold. Maybe I need to detox metals. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe you don't. Maybe you need to be patient. So kind of the other question you asked, so like, where am I at? What am I doing? We are currently focusing on growing awareness around our brand core formulas. The reason that that's even the name that we decided on is because you could be super strong in your legs, but if your core is weak, you're going to get injured. Everything comes back to the strength of the core of the body. It's what holds it all together. And each product is a formula that supports foundations. And so that's where we got that. And so each formula we have helps fill in the gaps for people from a foundational standpoint. And we have information on our website for that. And that has been my focus for the past 1.5 years in my own health. I stopped detox protocols. I stopped all the crazy things that people push in the health space and these things that are almost seen unattainable. And I went back to, I'm going to eat 3 to 5 meals a day of whole nutrient dense foods. I'm going to surround myself with community and laughter. I'm going to drink enough mineral rich water. I'm going to take time to breathe each day. I'm going to prioritize my sleep and aim to get 8+ hours a night, because before the electric light bulb, people got 10 hours of sleep. Now it's average 6.7. I'm going to prioritize my sleep. I'm going to stay off social media. I'm going to take Sabbaths from it. I'm going to rest. I'm going to have something that I look forward to on my calendar every day. I'm going to flood my body with nutrients, PC, balance oil, pumpkin seed oil, black cumin seed oil. I'm going to make sure I'm digesting my food, right? Like these are all things that seem so simple, but when you're consistent with them, I mean, I dropped 20 pounds of inflammation by doing all this. It was not anything crazy. I wasn't tracking macros. I was literally focusing on the foundations of health, and I was persistent with it. And over the course of a little over a year, 20 pounds just disappeared.
Girl, let's go. I mean, that right there, the proof is in the pudding, and it's true. I mean, I think that we overcomplicate a lot of things, and we have the mentality that more is better and that we're just missing something. When all along we need to simplify things. Like what you said, something true health is the combination of the mundane. What you think is just dumb and insignificant is probably the very thing that you need to do more of. Like if you think, oh, I just like, I don't have time to pause. When I pause, I think about all the things I need to do. Red flag. Like that should be a huge indicator to you that, okay, when I do stop, I get overwhelmed, then you are running with a lot of different things that are burning out every single system in the body. So yes, it may feel uncomfortable, but that is where the growth happens. And you even said something before about purpose. Purpose will accelerate healing. If your purpose to get healthy is so that you can have a hot summer bod, are you really going to stick to the habits? Are the habits going to be effective for you? Probably not. But if you know why, if you have a connection to the purpose on your life, it changes things because now you can't serve the purpose unless you're showing up for your body. And to show up for your body means you actually have to stop. You have to rest. You have to take pauses. Like you have to do the things that are uncomfortable, but that now doesn't become something in your mind. The perspective isn't that, well, this is just going to be terrible. I'm going to hate this. Like the perspective is, I like honoring myself. This is vital. Like this is a necessary in my life. If I bypass or skip this, I know that I'm injuring myself. And when you start looking at it from that perspective, they all of a sudden become non-negotiables. And they're not even, like you said, with the way that you live your life. These are not things you're getting up and having conversations in your mind about. Like, I just don't feel like journaling today. No, like that's therapeutic for me. I crave that. If I don't have that, like I'm holding on to things that I know is going to make the rest of my day a lot more difficult. So just changing, I'm telling you, guys, this is the goal. This is the meat of this episode. And I hope that it has encouraged your spirit and your soul, because that is really where you're going to get yourself to a place of healing. And to be able to see the evidence in your life, I think is the biggest testimony. So definitely follow Emily, her work. We're going to link all of her, all the places you can find her, core formulas, her social media, all of those things. And you're just like the most beautiful person inside and out. And we'll also link for you guys some of the information about the saunas and different things that we talked about. I know we covered a lot of different stuff, but I believe so wholeheartedly that some of this is going to be able to release you from the overwhelming thoughts of, I need more to get better. Because that's not the case. It's not. We're here to tell you that it can be done. And a lot of times it will set your mind free from the bigger things that are keeping you attached to things that are just not meant for you. So Emily, it's always so fun to hang out.
So fun. So glad.
I know. This is always a good time. Also, I'll put in the original episode we did with her, because if you're interested in blood chemistry, that episode is chock full of information. Like you will need to take notes. It's that good. So anyway, I'm so glad that you joined us today. You're just an incredible person. You're doing great work and you're helping people get better. I mean, inside and out, just physical body, mind, spiritually. And I love that about your work. And we'll just be praying as you go forth into this next season, because I know you have even greater things coming. Guys, I hope you loved this show. Share it with a friend. Hit us up on Instagram. You can follow Emily, myself, Health Institute, but we're just so grateful for your time today. I hope it encouraged you, and we will see you guys on the next episode.